Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Coffee with Craig. This is where we talk about firearms and the Second Amendment as it relates to politics, culture, advocacy, the fight for our right to keep and bear arms. We appreciate you guys being a part of the conversation and hope you will invite your friends to do the same. How do you do that? By liking and sharing this video feed. Go ahead and do it right now so your friends can be a part of the conversation right now. We're on YouTube. We're on Facebook. Not hard to find us, so please do. All right, let's get into today's topic. There was a conversation that has been taking place lately relating to the right to keep and bear arms. And much of this conversation has involved the youth of our country. Specifically after the Parkland shooting, a group decided to put together a march in Washington, D.C., which was actually turned out to be a march in many places across the country, with the whole idea of increasing gun control. And the interesting thing is that as we have this conversation, I think anyone who watched the event, anyone who was fair-minded would look at it and say that that firearms and gun control and attacking people who support the Second Amendment was a major part of the conversation over the weekend or at that particular march. But interestingly enough, I was reading an article in Vox, and I don't know why they call it Vox, unless it's, I don't know, maybe they're supposed to be The Voice as opposed to Fox. I don't know exactly what that's supposed to mean, except that they seem to dedicate a lot of their time to criticizing Fox News and those who are on Fox News. But they made the case that it was Fox News that turned the March for Our Lives into a Second Amendment issue. When I think clearly it can be made, the case can be made that no, that wasn't Fox's doing. That was actually simply what Fox was reporting.
Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. If there's one lesson of this weekend's March for Our Lives, it's that ending violence in America is easy. So easy that even children know how to do it. All that stands between the broken, chaotic country we live in and the peaceful utopia of the future is a very small group of very evil people, mostly Republicans. As Parkland student David Hogg noted the other day, there are some, quote, sick effers out there who want to sell more guns, murder more children, and honestly, just get reelected. Well, on the stage on Saturday, his classmate Alex Wind agreed with this. Quote, if you take money from the NRA, Wind told the crowd, you have chosen death. So it's all pretty straightforward. If the NRA wasn't so blindly committed to killing children, if they didn't enjoy murder for its own sake, we wouldn't have school shootings in the first place. It's that simple. Speakers of the march told us that repeatedly, and the media dutifully amplified that message and formed a protective ring around the activists. As Politico reporter Ben White put it, quote, the sickening efforts to slime, undermine, defame, and dehumanize these young people betrays an enormous amount of fear. In other words, shut up, America. Don't ask questions. The kids know what they're doing.
Right. The kids know what they are doing. So, okay, so they did cover it, but I believe that in every single point that was made in Tucker Carlson's commentary there was a specific point about things that, one, were actually said during this event, that were said by the people who put on the event. When they talked about going after politicians who support the Second Amendment, and by the way, because they support the Second Amendment, they are supported by the NRA. It's not, well, the NRA gave the money, therefore they support the NRA and the NRA's positions. No, they support the Second Amendment, and the NRA supports them for supporting the Second Amendment, as do we. Now, we don't give money like the NRA does, but we do make it a point to recognize politicians who do take actions that support our constitutional right to keep and bear arms. But once again, This individual specific. I mean, what did he do? What did he say that was not true? What lie did Tucker Carlson say in that particular commentary? I would say none. But then again, so he was talking. So then again, there was a piece. And once again, I was telling you about this piece in Vox. It was written by a gentleman. His name is Alvin Chang. He's a senior graphics reporter, which means he likes to make all sorts of cool graphs and whatnot. And it's interesting because this particular guy has made a career, at least at Vox, of going after, of advocating, not just reporting, but advocating for liberal causes. Now, if you think I'm wrong, let me just read you a couple of the titles of the stuff that he's done. Asians are being used to make the case against affirmative action. There is the how Fox News turned the March for Our Lives into an attack on the Second Amendment. Yeah, they did that all on their own. Facebook and Cambridge Analytica scandal explained with a simple diagram. I wonder if he did a similar diagram for Facebook and the Obama campaign. Oh, Fox News really doesn't want to say Trump and porn star on air. Or here's another one. How Fox News made Andrew McCabe a deep state villain. Now, mind you, this is all put together with, keep in mind in his little bio thing, he brags about his piece he did supporting Obamacare and how we went through 2 years of Hannity transcripts. Now, I know a lot of you out there like Hannity, but how many of you would go through 2 years of Hannity transcripts? Unless your goal was to undo Sean Hannity. I doubt that many of you would do that. So anyway, so what does he point to as evidence that they in fact sought to make the march what's the word I'm for? A left wing or an anti-gun thing? Well, one of the things they point to is how much coverage that Fox News gave to the particular march, as they covered the March for Our Lives compared to other news networks. Now, mind you, we all know how unbiased the other news networks are, like MSNBC and Fox News and CNN. So here you note that pretty much, other than the fact that they did cover other things. You look at it, it pretty much mirrored what the other groups did. So in other words, if there was something that needed to be covered, they covered it. They just didn't spend or invest as much time. And then again, why would they? In particular, when the message of the march was about being anti-Second Amendment, which is something that, well, Fox generally as a rule tends not to support. They also talked about how much airtime they devoted once again to the March for Our Lives. 10% of CNN's airtime went to it, 11% of MSNBC's, and 6% of Fox. So, in other words, they covered it, but did any of them really cover it like as a major story beyond 11%? No, not at all. Now, one of the other things that they point to was that when Fox did talk about it, they talked about it as it relates to gun rights. Here's another sample. How much Fox News talked about gun rights during the armed teachers debate? Why wouldn't you talk about the fundamental right to self-defense, or allowing teachers in this case, to be able to exercise their constitutional right? Because keep in mind, no one's talking about arming teachers against their will. It's simply, if you are a teacher and you desire to be able to possess a firearm on campus and you have a concealed carry permit, it's about allowing you to do so. That has everything to do with the ability to be able to exercise your right to keep and bear arms. Once again, and then here when we talk about Fox News coverage, when they talked about the march, specifically talking about the text in the context of the Second Amendment. Well, let's see. People were up there talking about taking away people's constitutional right to keep and bear arms. I'm pretty sure that if that's what you're going to do, then people are going to have an issue with it. I don't know. I don't see that as being something that's completely out there and crazy. But I don't know, maybe then again, I'm not Vox. Now, they also pointed to the fact that they brought on people who contradicted the message of the march. Now, Fox's note, they like to call themselves fair and balanced, right? Now, they did bring on people. And if you watched Fox News, they did, in fact, bring on people who were supporters of the march, were in the march, and were the leaders within the march. But they also brought on people, students like this individual right here, who was a student there at Parkland High School who doesn't agree with their message. They brought him on. Sorry, let me make sure to get his picture up there. They brought him on, and, well, Fox News, other stations didn't want to have him on. Other stations didn't want you to hear from him. Other stations were not particularly interested in anything that individual had to say. Well, then what did Fox News want to do? And part of the thing was, getting back to some of the other things, is they really weren't interested in the truth. They have a perspective, and they don't want anybody to speak out that might contradict their perspective. Yeah, that pretty much about fits.
This weekend, Vox.com ran a story with this title: "I've covered gun violence for years. The solutions aren't a big mystery." The piece was written by someone called German Lopez, whom Fox.com identified as, quote, a senior reporter. Lopez graduated with a journalism degree from the University of Cincinnati in 2012. He's still in his 20s. "I've covered gun violence for years," may be an overstatement. Nevertheless, Lopez approached this subject with all the self-confidence of an eminent research scientist wading in data. What America likely needs, Lopez concluded, is something more like Australia's mandatory buyback program, essentially a gun confiscation scheme paired with a serious ban on specific firearms, potentially including all semi-automatic weapons. All semi-automatic weapons? There are more than 100 million of those in the United States right now, and the overwhelming majority of them are sitting in the bedroom closets of law-abiding Americans who've done nothing wrong and don't have plans to do anything wrong. So how exactly would we confiscate all those guns? Somebody would have to go door to door to take them by force, arresting anyone who resists. In the name of ending gun violence, people would be shot to death. There's no question about that. So who exactly is going to do it? Local police, the FBI, Delta Force? German Lopez of Vox did not volunteer for that job himself. Instead, he blamed the NRA for blocking the whole idea. Quote, "The Supreme Court and U.S. lawmakers, backed by the powerful gun lobby, particularly the NRA, widely agree that the Second Amendment does put barriers on how far restrictions can go." Wait, we've got news here. The Supreme Court, according to Vox, is also in the pocket of the NRA. Is there evidence of that? Which justices are taking gun money exactly? Or is Vox just throwing out that claim because all decent people who live in big cities already know the NRA is evil, so why get hung up on details? This is the problem with letting children write news stories. The articles tend to be dumb, and intentionally or not, they tend to be inaccurate and dishonest. Worst of all, they tend to reinforce the fantasy that complex problems have simple solutions, because that's what most children believe. In real life, nothing is simple. We don't really know why the incidence of school shootings has risen, even as the proportion of households with firearms has dropped. We ought to do our best to find out. The self-righteous kids screaming at you on television over the weekend aren't helping at all.
No, they are not helping at all. But yet, we're supposed to just, any attempt to criticize them, any attempt to call out the information that they put out there as nonsense, well, we're shouted down. See, the reason why they want to do this is this. The reason why is because they know that when they have to sit down and have a conversation with us, when the adults in the room have a conversation, and the adults on the gun grabbing side spout the same sort of nonsense that these individuals do, well, then the adults on the liberty side that happen to believe in the right to keep and bear arms come at them with facts that are irrefutable. But if you bring forth the children and you let the children spout the nonsense, well, they're just children. They're grieving. You dare not contradict them, because it would hurt their self-esteem. they would be hurt, and they would just, what would they ever do? You can't be an adult criticizing a child for having their opinion based on absolutely no fact or real information. See, and then in the end, you have policymakers who say, oh, look how brave these children are. They're out there and they're speaking and they're standing up. Well, here's the deal, folks. If you want to step into the conversation, if you want to be in the conversation, then be in the conversation. Let's put the real facts on the table. Stop acting like children. What does the word say? Is that when I was a boy, when I was a child, I did childish things. But when I grew up and I became a man, I put away childish things. And as when I became a man, I started to take a look at information and look at facts, and I realized that some of the stuff, a lot of the stuff that's spouted by these folks, is just hogwash. And the worst part is that it's hogwash that is being handed to them by people who want to take away their liberty, and they're too young and immature to even realize it. I see people all the time talk about, oh, well, you know, I did it just yesterday. I was talking about how they were talking about how the gun control movement is a conversation. It's a racial issue. Yeah, it's a racial issue because all gun control has largely been about disarming people of color, at least the initial forms of it. Now they just want to disarm us all. But that's largely what gun control was all about, was disarming people of color, disarming those people. Well, now all of us are those people. All adults are those people. And now you're trying to bring in our children to try and participate in the disarming of their future selves. Well, some of us adults in the room are not going to stand for it. And I very much appreciate Tucker Carlson for his words of rebuke to the children there over at Vox. Because, yeah, they're not the sharpest knives in the drawer. Or maybe they're not. They're not the brightest bananas in the bunch. Anyway, folks, that's going to be it for today's Coffee with Craig. Thank you so much for tuning in. We appreciate the fact that you guys like and share these videos, letting people know about the Firearms Policy Coalition. We are the home in the fight for civil rights. Remember, you got to use them or you're going to lose them. Stay free.
If you like our videos, follow, subscribe, like, and share.